there's three reasons that are pretty obvious why you didn't get called back, okay? The first reason is simply statistical probability. We got to get that out of the way. If there's a job posted and the job receives 300 candidates, statistically, your odds of getting the job are less than 1%. Okay, they're a third of a percent. 299 candidates will go away with a no. Regardless of how qualified they are, regardless of how awesome they are, they will go away with a no. That's just the reality of it, okay? So you could be perfectly qualified, you could have done everything right, but they can't give the job to all 300 candidates that applied, okay? So that's the number one most obvious reason. What do you do about that? You keep on trucking. You did absolutely nothing wrong. This is a numbers game. You just have to keep trying. You have another roll of the dice, and the next time you will get it, okay? Statistical probability will work in your favor. So that's the most obvious reason. So if this has happened to you, that's usually the most likely reason. Second reason it could be is that if you're talking to a recruiter especially, they can have sometimes some pretty distorted ideas of what qualified means, quote unquote qualified, right? There are many situations where you can do a job, you're a highly capable person, you're highly trainable, you've done similar things, but in the mind of the person that's making the decisions, they look at your resume and they say, you're not qualified. And they could be completely wrong. That is also common, okay? I could get into all the reasons for that, but I'd be here for 3 hours if I did. Another reason that's likely that you did not receive an interview, okay, is there are political things going on behind the scenes, okay? The most common is that the decision maker or one of the decision makers, usually a hiring manager, they are actually wanting to hire an internal candidate, but for political reasons and reasons of organizational policy, they can't just go ahead and hire the person they want. They have to make it appear that they are considering other people, including putting it open to a public call for external candidates. Okay. Now, as we all know, that may not be the reality. So even though they post the job and they take external candidates, what's really going on is that the person who makes the decisions, or one of the people that makes decisions, they are totally closed to the opinion of hiring anyone other than their internal candidate that they want to hire. Okay. So if you are unlucky enough to unsuspectingly fall into that situation, then you're rejected, and it may seem like, you're not good enough or you did something wrong. No, it's simply that they have a hidden agenda going on, and you did absolutely nothing wrong. You just walked into a no-win situation. Okay, so that also is relatively common. Okay, so I've listed 3 reasons so far. If any of these are happened to you, the takeaway of what you should do is that you should keep on trucking. You did absolutely nothing wrong. It's just a numbers game. This roll of the dice didn't work out. The next one will. So you keep at it. You keep applying for more positions, okay? Another reason why you may have been rejected for the job or not called back, not given an interview when you're in the application stage, is things like keyword matching, things like what you chose to put on your resume or your application, okay? Now, this is a whole topic unto itself. I can't cover it here, but in this case, there may be something that you can do about it, okay? Because if that was the reason, and this is a big if that's the reason, then you need to improve in that process. All I'm going to say here is that for a lot of posted jobs where you go through a recruiter, okay, they have this what's the word? What's the word that means a sickness and a bad thing? A pathological obsession with certain terms. And this comes usually from the fact that the person behind the scenes here, usually a recruiter, they don't understand the terms. They're being asked to fill a position. They themselves don't know anything about that work or that industry, even sometimes. And so they have to rely on the keywords, on the terms they've been told to look for. So the problem is, as we all know in the real world, there's more than one term to describe something. I've done videos on this where a lot of industries, they use multiple terms to describe things. And if you happened to use a certain term to describe your experience on your resume, but in the job description, they're using a different term to describe that same thing, either a human reviewing your resume or a machine reviewing your resume will conclude that, oh, you don't have the required experience, which is, of course, false, just that you were using a different word for it, right? So the only thing I'll say here is that you have to do some basic things like using their terminology. So even though your resume is done and you're very proud of it, you might have even paid a professional to help you write it and phrase everything, you have to go back and tweak it and make sure that you are using the terms that they are using in their job description, okay? Now, this is something that you can work on, okay? So learn about that, do your own research on it, if you suspect that may be the problem. This is usually not the problem, but as increasingly ATS is used, especially for entry-level jobs and jobs where they have lots of applicants, it continues to be a thing. Okay, so if you're applying for entry-level jobs or publicly posted jobs exclusively, then this may be something you really want to look into, okay? Now, there is an alternative. The alternative, of course, is to not just apply to posted jobs. If you've listened to any of my stuff on this channel, you know that posted jobs are not the majority of jobs that are out there. It's only like 30% or something like that, around there, 20% to 30% of jobs are actually posted. The other 70 to 80% of all the jobs that are actually out there are not posted. So it makes a lot of sense to go after those, and you have less competition when you're doing it. If this is all new to you, and maybe you don't even believe me when I say this, I encourage you, don't take my word for it, do your own research, you'll see that it's true. And if you need some help in that department, by the way, I do have a course that explains the entire thing, how it works, and what I recommend is the method you go about applying for jobs. Okay, so that's the interview stage. Those are the reasons you might have been rejected and you didn't get, the application stage. Those are the reasons why you might have been rejected and you didn't get an interview. Hopefully that makes sense. We've talked about the application stage of the hiring process, why you may not have gotten an interview. Now, let's talk about the interview stage, where you went in for an interview, but it didn't go anywhere. They didn't call you back, or they terminated the process at some point. What's going on there? Okay, now this is where we get into more, there's a greater number of reasons why this could have occurred. Let's go through some of them here. Okay. If you don't know this already, learn this now. Job interviews are all about soft skills. They are not about your technical qualifications, okay? The resume stage, the application stage, that's about the technical qualifications. Once they bring you in for an interview, it's no longer about technical qualifications. Every single person they call for an interview, they have decided that that person is technically qualified. So the competition between the candidates is no longer really about who's the most qualified, because they're all qualified in the eyes of the decision makers. Okay, if they called them in they're not going to call in someone that on paper is clearly not qualified to do the job. That would be a waste of their time. Okay, so they're not going to do that. So if you were called in for an interview, they're signaling that they believe that on paper you are perfectly capable of doing the job. What they want to do now is assess you as a person, okay? Are you the type of person that they would want to work with? Okay, that's what they're really doing in a job interview. So it can be deceptive, because even though they're asking you about, your experience and, maybe your education and things like this, really, they're assessing who you are as a person and whether you fit with what they happen to be looking for, okay? The other thing you need to know about job interviews is that what they happen to be looking for can be completely out to lunch. So if you didn't measure up to their criteria, it may not necessarily be a reflection on you. It may be a reflection on how out to lunch these people are. That has been known, okay? Okay, let's get into it. Reasons for being rejected at the interview stage. You did the interview, they didn't call you back. Number one, failure of soft skills. That's the most obvious. Okay, we're going to get into that a little bit deeper. It could be your presentation, your appearance, okay, how you groom yourself, your attire, how you dress, right? It could be your attitude. If you go in there being, with a very cocky, arrogant attitude, that's almost an instant turnoff. If there's any issues with your attitude, it doesn't matter how qualified you are. It's an instant fail, sudden death, okay? You could be Albert Einstein and they'll still reject you because they don't want to work with that. You know what I'm saying? So that's a really big reason. And a lot of introverts and a lot of people that don't really do a lot of social interaction as the main part of their job, a lot of times they have a blind spot for that. So just be aware of that. That's probably the number one thing they're looking for. Okay? So issues of being arrogant, issues with being agreeable, okay? If like every little thing that they ask of you, take a chair, or would you mind sitting over there? If every little thing they ask of you is a problem, right? It's like, well, no, I'd rather sit over there. Or, do you have a more comfortable chair? Those are little signals that like, if you're behaving this way in the interview, you're probably going to behave like that if they employ you in the office or in the workplace. Okay, an issue with negativity. You're very pessimistic. You're finding fault with everything. These are like instant turnoffs that can blow the interview, no matter how qualified you are. Okay, charisma, very closely related to that. Being likable. Very important to smile. Very important to be polite. Very important to say nice things. Compliment. If they've done something nice for you, tell them that. Say, oh, thank you. That's very nice of you. I appreciate that. People tend to like you if you show your appreciation for something that they took the trouble to do. So little things like that. Okay, I can't get into it here, but these are very important. These will endear you to whoever is interviewing you and make them think, I want to work with that person. I like that person. I'd love to have them around. That's the kind of people I want around me, right? Okay, so make sure that that stuff is in order, okay? You know about it, you're aware of it, and you're practicing this kind of thing. Another reason could be a language barrier, okay? This doesn't apply to everyone, but if you are doing interviews that are not in your native language, and I know what that's like, I've been on both sides of that, but there's a lot of people that they live with this as a constant thing. It can be that. As much as possible, try and make it easy to be understood, and speak slower. If there's an issue of having like a really thick accent or anything like that, like do your best to work on that, because that will only improve your chances. Okay. The other thing is that if that's the issue, or any of these really are the issue, they will never tell you, because it's very hard to defend. How do you defend like, oh, I just didn't like that person? They kind of turned me off. Like, how do you defend that? You can't. Right? It just, if people call you on that, you always just look like a jerk. But these are the thought processes behind the interviewers, right? So they will never admit to any of this. The last one I want to group into this bunch is communication skills. This is separate from like a language barrier or, your attitude. This is how to express yourself. So if they ask you a question in a job interview and it takes you 10 minutes to answer and you ramble and you don't even really answer, you forget what the question is, and you can't structure your thoughts properly. I know I'm not doing a great example right now, but these are issues, okay? So communication skills, being able to communicate and send the desired signal. So if you say something and, you think you're being polite, but it comes across to them like you're being rude when you're not, that is an issue with communication skills, right? You need to convey the message that you want to convey. You didn't intend to convey the message that I'm being rude, but because your choice of body language and the words you said and how you said them, it came across like that, right? So communication skills are a big one, okay? So make sure that those things are there. Now, those 4 reasons I've just mentioned, failure of soft skills, your appearance and attitude, a language barrier, and communication skills, these are things that you can work on. And I would encourage everyone to work on these. The better you get at this stuff, the more employment possibilities you will have in your life, the more opportunities you will come your way in life if these are improved. So never stop working on these. Always try and improve yourself. But these are prime candidates for maybe why you weren't called back for an interview. Okay, these are the things that you can work on. Once again, I have courses that can help. I have this one in particular, right? My Write Like a Professional course. If you're the type of person that's into that, you take courses and things, or you want to learn more from me, there's a link in the description box if you want to go down that route, no pressure. But I created it for people to work on these things. It's not just about how to write, it's about what to say, what to write, what to communicate, what goes over well, what doesn't, and what are some of the principles involved that are, maybe going over people's heads when you're young and you're starting out, but are in play. Okay, there's other things too. There's a lot of other things. We're talking about the application stage. The interview stage. You went down for a job interview and you did not get called back. Why is this? There are other things too. For example, personality, okay? They could have had an issue with your personality. This is one that a lot of people really don't talk about because, once again, it's very sensitive. Now, the thing is here, remember, it's not about good or bad. It's about what they happen to be looking for. If you're a very introverted person and you apply for an outside sales job and you go down there and you have a very introverted personality and manner, that can be an instant sudden death elimination. They say, no, we want a much more extroverted type person for this role. It's a sales role. You've got to be a bubbly type, talkative type person. So no dice, right? Now, that's not a reflection on you. There are other jobs. If you go down for a job as a developer, writing code, they'll love that. They'll say, hey, great, this is the type of person that can just shut up and get on with some work. And they'll be happy working all day long by themselves, and they won't have a problem with that. They'll regard that as a great work environment. Nobody's bothering me. In that case, your personality is an absolute boon. They'll love that. Okay, so it's not about changing your personality. It's just being aware that they're also looking for these types of things. And like I said earlier, they also have some very, very weird ideas sometimes of what the job requires. And those ideas are completely out to lunch half the time, but you just didn't have whatever crazy thing they were looking for. Okay, so anyway, that's all I'll say about it here, but it's a personality thing. What to do about it? Absolutely nothing. You did nothing wrong. Just keep on trucking. This throw of the dice didn't yield any results. The next one will. Okay, risk aversion. This is something recruiters especially are trained to look for. I know this because I used to teach recruiters in university. The way recruiters think about candidates is they think of them as certain things make them risky. For if you hire them, they will not work out. And recruiters are trained to spot these and avoid them. Now, it's an open debate whether this stuff really is a problem or not, but it's the way recruiters are trained to think, okay? So for example, things that make you risky in the eyes of a recruiter are like things like having a work gap on your resume. If nobody was hiring you and you weren't working, maybe there's a reason we don't know about, right? So that makes you risky. If we hire you, maybe there's a higher chance you won't work out. Job hopping. If your work experience shows that, you stay in a job for a very short amount of time and then move on, and you keep doing that, that makes them think that, if we hire you, you'll probably stay here only for a short time and then quit, and then we have to look for another candidate all over again. So you're a higher risk if we hire you. Salary expectations. If you ask for too much money, that makes you a high-risk candidate. They think that maybe you won't be happy with the money here, and it'll only be a matter of time before you jump ship and go somewhere else. Okay? Here's another one. You don't show any desire to do this job in the interview. This is a big red flag. You could be the most qualified person ever. You could be the most efficient person ever and effective. But if you don't want to do the job, it's not going to work out. If you just find this type of work really boring, it's not going to work. So one of the things they actively look for is some kind of hint that you are passionate to some degree of doing this work, right? And you will be happy if you're given this job to do. You won't hate every moment of it. So remember that it's important to show this. Okay. But if they didn't see that, or they didn't see enough of it, they can regard you as a high risk candidate. Now, I know some entry level jobs, it's very, very hard to be excited about it. And if you are excited about it, something's wrong if you're excited about doing that. Like, you work in a rendering plant, like, handling the chickens or killing the chickens, and, you enjoy that. That might be a problem, but they think that's great. They'll hire you for that job, right? So I'm not gonna touch that, but that's a thing. That's something that's going on in a job interview. Okay. And your experience is too diverse. If you've done a lot of different things, you're a generalist as opposed to someone who's worked in a very specific place for many years and that's all you've done. They might consider that a high risk candidate. You jump around. You don't seem to have any core competency. These can all be really silly, but I'm just telling you how they think. Okay. So be aware that this is also going on. They're looking for that, riskiness, and they are risk averse. They tend to not want to hire the best candidate. They want to hire the least risky candidate. That's usually how recruiters, especially, are trained to do this. What do you do about this? Absolutely nothing. You keep on trucking. You haven't done anything wrong. Okay. Now, if you are playing this game over and over again, you're applying to publicly posted jobs, and it's been a long time and you're not really getting any bites, you may want to consider applying for jobs in different ways. Okay, like getting jobs in different ways. There's more to job search than just applying for posted jobs on the internet. The vast majority of jobs are not posted. If you don't believe me, do your own research. You'll see that's true. And there are ways to pursue those. Those tend to be the better jobs. Those tend to have a much more positive hiring process. You feel better about the whole process. Okay. So pursue other ways of getting jobs. There's many different ways of getting hired and getting employment. So if you don't know what those are, if you're kind of overwhelmed by all this, I have a course that helps explain all of that to you also. There's a link in the description box if you're the type of person that does courses and is into that kind of thing. Okay, so those are the things, those last 4 reasons I explained, which were you could have been eliminated for issues with personality, risk aversion. There's even more here. Their assessment of your qualifications has changed. This is rare that it actually occurs, but they usually use this as a very popular kiss-off reason for why you were rejected. So what it is on paper, they read your resume or your application and they came away from it thinking you're qualified. But then after speaking to you in person, they then change their opinion. They now think, well, it turns out you're not really as qualified as we thought you were, having spoken to you about your experiences. So they eliminated you for that reason. That usually is not the most popular reason why people are rejected, but they always say, when they do give a reason, usually they give this one because it's very safe. You're not going to accuse them of anything reasonable if they say this. So that's what they say. But just because they've told you this doesn't mean that's what actually happened. And finally, the elephant in the room. Why did you get rejected after doing an interview? Random chance, statistical probability. Usually they bring in about 8 candidates to interview. That will vary, obviously, but usually it's around 8. It could be anywhere between 2 and like 20, depending on what job it is. But I think around 8 is the average, 6 to 8. And the problem is that there's only one job. You got 8 candidates that you've interviewed, so 7 will be going away with a no, regardless of how wonderful they were. Maybe there were 3 absolutely amazing candidates, and they might have essentially proverbially rolled a dice. So even though you did everything right, you still came away with a no. What do you do about that? Absolutely nothing. You keep on trucking. This is a numbers game. Okay? Random chance worked against you this time. It will work again. It will work for you at some point in the future, maybe even the next time. So just keep on trucking. Okay. As I said, the only other thing you could possibly do is investigate other ways of applying for a job. Okay. So learn about some of the alternate methods, some of which are much, much more effective. Trust me. Most people who get hired do not get hired by applying to internet jobs. So if that's a surprise to you, don't take my word for it. Look it up. You'll see that's true. And there you go. So these were the reasons, the common reasons of if you failed an interview, they did not call you back. These are why. So to sum up, failure of soft skills, your appearance and attitude, possible language barrier, communication skills, which goes beyond a language barrier, issues of personality, issues with risk aversion, issues with their perception of your qualifications changing after having spoken to you, and random chance. Okay. So we were talking about if you were rejected in the hiring process, what's going on and what you should do about it. And we were covering the 3 different stages of the hiring process. We talked about the application stage, where you send in your application. We talked about the interview stage, where they've called you in for an interview and done an interview with you, maybe multiple interviews, but they then didn't call you back. Okay, so we've covered that. Now we're going to talk about the 3rd and final stage of the hiring process, which is the offer stage. Okay, you're down to possibly the final 3 contenders, or they've already made an offer to you. Okay, so if they did that, but you didn't hear back because it didn't go anywhere, what's going on? Let's get into that. Okay, there's multiple reasons why this might have occurred. Okay, the most obvious elephant in the room is random chance. If you're in the final 3, it might be an official final 3, or it might be an informal final 3. And the way that works is that they usually, it's a common thing, especially in jobs that have multiple rounds of interviews, to, the last round of interviews is between the final 3 candidates, right? And then what they'll do is they'll offer the job to one of the 3. Okay, their lead choice. Okay. Now, just because that candidate got an offer doesn't mean necessarily that the other 2 are out of the running. If the first candidate that received an offer decides to try and play hardball and is giving them a bunch of runaround, it's like, no, I want these 10 changes made to the proposed employment contract and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes they may decide, you know what? I don't want to play this game. Let's make an offer to the runner-up, candidate number 2, and let's see if they'll just accept it as read, right? So sometimes that happens, right? Okay, so that's why I'm talking about it like it's the final 3, even though they might have made an offer to only one candidate at this point. Okay, the elephant in the room is random chance. Why didn't it work out? Random chance. There's 3 candidates. There's one job. 2 of them are going to be going home with a no. There's just no way around that. They could have done everything right, but it was just a matter of statistical probability. They drew the short straw and they did not get the offer. And that's all it is. What do you do about that? Absolutely nothing. You keep on trucking. You did nothing wrong. You just, better luck next throw of the dice. Okay. Another reason could be personal preferences. A lot of times, especially hiring managers, have highly illogical personal preferences in who they pick. A lot of times, the vast, vast majority of the time, they will not disclose these. They won't say what they're looking for. And they certainly won't disclose it to candidates because, number one, it can make you seem like an idiot and, open to attack for it. And number 2, it allows you to game their system. So if they rejected you because, you were a very sullen person and they like very happy people or something, once the word is out that, oh, they like happy people, next thing you know, the next job that people apply for and go up for, they're all super happy because they know that that particular individual wants to hire someone that's happy and not sullen. So for a variety of reasons, they won't disclose this, but they can have very idiosyncratic things that they're looking for that are a lot of times just stupid. But they've got it into their head that that's what they want. So that's what they look for. And you didn't have it. And sometimes it's actually a testament to you that you didn't have it. Okay, so there's a lot of things in there. The third reason could be there's political stuff going on. Okay, this is an open secret. I don't know what it's called. I call it the Final Three game, where, you know, for example, they'll have like a lead candidate, and then they'll have a number two candidate who's not really a contender. They've just been placed there to make the number one candidate look even better, right? That's a common thing, right? So maybe, you know, you're stuck as the number two candidate, you know, in the eyes of these clowns that, you know, are playing these games. So that could have been a reason too. There could be a political thing. They wanted to hire the number one candidate the whole time. They only strung you along to make it appear that, you know, it's objective and, you know, or to contrast that person against an external candidate or whatever, right? So there could be a bunch of political stuff going on. This is common, and you could have just fallen into that. And that's a reason that people get rejected at this stage. Okay, what do you do about any of these three things I just mentioned? Random chance, personal preferences, or political reasons? Absolutely nothing. Keep on trucking. You're doing nothing wrong. The only possible thing you could do is, if this keeps happening over and over and over again, look into alternate ways of getting jobs. Okay, there's many different methods to get jobs, and you can look in many different places to get jobs. So learn about that stuff. If you're interested in doing that with me, I have a course that covers all of that stuff right here. Link in the description box if you're into that kind of thing. Okay, there's other reasons too. There's some things that there are reasons why you were rejected that are things that you actually did wrong that you can maybe improve. Let's talk about those. There's two big ones. Number one is if they make you an offer and you make a counter offer, you try and negotiate. Okay, if you're not very good at negotiation, there's a whole bunch of blunders you can make there. I can't get into that because that's a huge topic. But right now, I've done other videos on this. But for example, trying to negotiate on items that are non-negotiable, right? So an example would be asking for like 30% more when it comes to money. Like anything above 30% more is usually a problem, right? If it is possible to negotiate, most cases they can't negotiate more than 30%, you know, say like, you know, your salary or your compensation. So things like this. It might not be possible to negotiate. You're asking for more than they can actually give you. Like, it's not that they don't want to give you it, it's that they can't, right? So unfortunately, you've eliminated yourself. Okay, so negotiating above their reservation price, like the highest amount they could possibly go, okay? Maybe it's a failure on your part to read the situation. There are some clues that can tell you when to negotiate on price and other elements and when not to. For example, if the let's say company, if they employ a lot of employees and they're all working at the same pay grade, and it's going to be the pay grade that you're working in, usually it means that you can't negotiate on price, because if they give you more money, that would mean they would have to give everyone more money, or they're going to have a mutiny on their hands once the word gets out. You know, then it may not be possible. If, on the other hand, you're applying for a job where you're a one-off, it's just you in this role. You have no other people, no other peers that are in the same role as you. You're in your own pay grade, okay? And maybe it's a company that makes a lot of money but only has a small number of people working there. Then it seems it's very likely they can negotiate on price, okay? So there's a lot of things in there. It's issues with your negotiation process, how you negotiate it. That can eliminate you. Or even the fact that you try to negotiate sometimes. That signals to them, they interpret that as like, oh, you're playing hardball, you're not a team player, you're out for yourself, okay. You know, message received, order rescinded, you know. Okay, another thing that can go on there is you can signal to them a lack of agreeableness by overly playing hardball with things. Sometimes you can cause them to rescind an offer by how you handle their first offer. For example, there's some protocol you have to go through. If they give you an offer and they regard it as like, this is a big deal, this is a big deal to us, and we want it to be a big deal to you because we feel that this is a very good job that we're offering. And we've looked very hard to find the right person, and we feel that that person is you. So if that's how they feel, and then you turn around and act like, oh, why do you insult me with this low offer? I don't even know if I really want to work here. And you say stuff like this, you communicate this kind of thing back to them. Sometimes, and I've seen this, sometimes people will rescind an offer just out of spite. I know it's kind of weird, but you know what I mean? So it is possible to initiate this stuff through your actions, right? You signaled a lack of agreeableness by playing hardball a little too much. You asked for way too much. Or just the process you did it. You didn't get back to them promptly. You didn't say thank you when they made you an offer. Things like this. All that stuff does contribute. So what can you do about this? Learn the basics of negotiation. Learn the basics of how you do high-level personal interaction in a business context. Do your own research. If you want to learn some of that stuff from me, I have this course here. Okay, that goes into a lot of that stuff, like making requests, and a negotiation is a request. You're wanting to get them to agree to something. So there's a way to do that, and there's a way not to do that. Okay, understanding the principles of how this stuff works, and also understanding the human factor. If you're a very introverted person, you may not be super well at persuading people, influencing people, getting them to warm to an idea and buy into it. It's not the hardest thing in the world to learn that stuff, but you got to know it. So if that's you, look at that stuff. That might be a reason why it didn't work out. But those are the two things you can do something about: negotiation and signaling a lack of agreeableness. Okay, so if that was the reason, you can do something about that. Learn to negotiate, learn about people, learn how to interact and persuade people. Okay, so I've covered the entire hiring process in this video. If you were rejected at any of the 3 stages, what it could have been, what to do about it. Hopefully that makes sense.